Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of The Democratic View. My name is Phyllis Italiano, and I'm the hostess. And I have with me today a gentleman who's going to tell us about something that's going on right now that is about to occur actually in January, which is the reconfiguration, I guess you can call it, of the Montauk beaches. His name is Mike Bottini, and he is from the Surfriders.
Surfrider Foundation.
Surfrider Foundation.
Yeah, I'm the co-chair of the Eastern Long Island chapter of Surfrider. We have 3 chapters on Long Island. So,
and the goal of that group is to protect the beaches?
Well, our mission, it's an international organization, Surfrider Foundation, started in California in the 1980s. And our mission is threefold. We have 3 main priorities. One is protecting beach access for surfers and beachgoers. The other is to protect water quality. And the third is to protect our beaches.
And that's what we're going to talk about today.
We're talking about, today we're going to talk about our fight to protect our beach in Montauk, our public beach. And we were just talking earlier, there's a saying, so-and-so is worth something. A motel on the ocean front is worth X amount of money, but our public beaches really are priceless. You can't put a price tag on them.
And I'm going to tell you one other little thing which I didn't mention as we were before the show, which was that I lived in California for about a year and a half. And of course, I went in the water naturally, at Malibu and Santa Monica, where I lived. And when I came back to what was then my place, Fire Island, I would say to people, look at this sand. This sand is sugar. Do you know what the sand is in California? It's mud. What a beach we have.
Yeah, really, it's hard to, there are a lot of nice beaches around the world, but you'd be hard-pressed to say any are better than what we have on the South Shore of Long Island.
I couldn't agree with you more. So tell us what's going on.
Well, there's been, basically, this is no surprise, but for some reason, we tend to make decisions when things are really dire. So the shoreline in many places of Long Island has been retreating naturally. This has been going on for thousands of years. And this was something that was recognized by George Washington when he sited the Montauk Lighthouse. He said to his crew, I want you to build a lighthouse in a location that will ensure that it lasts for at least 200 years. This is the 1700s. And they built it on Turtle Hill, a high point at Montauk Point. And the 200 years have come and gone. And the lighthouse is right on the edge of the sea. So this is nothing new. There's a book by Larry McCormick, who taught at Southampton College. He's a geologist, called Living with Long Island's South Shore. He was one of several co-authors of the book. And he actually goes through and identifies different stretches of the ocean beach on Long Island, and the erosion rates, historic erosion rates, they do vary. So every situation is a little bit different. But the downtown Montauk area is a known erosion point. The beach is not accreting or building up. It's definitely been eroding for a long time. And in the 60s and 70s, before we passed a law, and you would argue, do you really need a law to tell people, thou shalt not build on the primary dune of the ocean? No, you do.
Yes, you do.
So, you know, I don't know what they were thinking. You know, they must have known that that was a risky venture, but, you know, they got 50 years out of their enterprise, and now they are, well, Sandy, even before Sandy, there were some problems. There was some storms that did get right up to the foundations of some of the motels in downtown Montauk. And Sandy kind of brought a lot of attention to it, and they capitalized on that. They hired a consultant to do a campaign to say that we need to save Montauk. So they put it in that context. And we need to get the Army Corps to shore up the beach here. And what they originally came out with 5 proposals. This was under the Wilkinson administration. And one of the proposals was to buy out the motels or work out a deal to relocate the motels that were actually in harm's way right on the primary dune and rebuild the primary dune where it naturally wants to be. And that option was, as far as I know, was only supported, at least on record, by the Surfrider Foundation. That's the, you know, that to us was the common sense approach to dealing with the ocean and coastal erosion. They settled on a different plan, which is shown here. They're planning to do an artificial dune with a core that's 50 feet wide and placed in a trench 3 feet deep and extends up 13 feet of sand-filled bags. They're a geotextile fabric. Each bag weighs about 2 tons, and they get stacked up and placed side by side to create basically a wall, a seawall in front of downtown Montauk, in front of the motels anyway. And then that gets covered with sand to look like a natural dune. And what you can see here is the black line tracing the dune crest. This is a natural dune in front of the IGA and Kirk Park area. There's also 3 motels behind this dune that didn't suffer any damage from Sandy. This dune is in excellent shape. Surfrider Foundation went out post-Sandy and measured what these dunes will look like. They were anywhere from 25 to 28 feet in elevation, and they were 125 to 150 feet in width. Wow. So they did what dunes do. Even after Sandy, they withheld the storm and protected the area behind. I should mention, though, that the last really big storm, the hurricane of 1938.
Oh, I know it well.
So that actually impacted Montauk and flooded a lot of Montauk. But that came in the back door, so to speak. That actually, the flooding came in from Fort Pond Bay. I don't know what the impact of that storm was on the ocean frontier. But you can follow this line. So this is the natural dune crest. And then there's a jag out onto the ocean beach, and they propose to have the reinforced dune here, 3,000 linear feet, and then ties in over here to the first residential property to the east. So these are all motels right here. And you know, there's a saying that you will always have a beach if you just let nature take its course. It just might not be where you want it to be. And in this case, we feel that the town is headed down a very slippery slope where they're going to try to build a dune in the ocean intertidal zone. And as I said at one of the town board meetings, go up and talk to a kid at the beach in the summer. Any 5-year-old will tell you that, You know, when you try and build something in the ocean intertidal zone, it's probably not going to be there the next day. I mean, this varies where you are relative to the tide at that time, but this reinforced dune is actually going to be built in the swash zone of the full moon and new moon tides. Those are our highest tides during the year. So what does this actually look like? Well, this is a cross section. These are the bags that are stacked. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers of these, about a 1.5 to 2 ton bags. And you can scale off from this area right here is 50 feet. And when you compare it to the toe of this geotube, sand-filled tube, and this one here, it's probably about 45 feet, the footprint of the geotextile sandbags.
And this is the ocean over here.
Yeah, and this is where the motels are. So what we feel is going to happen is that we're going to spend a lot of money, and we're going to basically see our public beach turn into a pile of geobags, which, you know, we would adamantly opposed to. It's just folly. It doesn't make any sense at all. And we have been trying to get the word out that if you're going to go ahead and make the decision to do this, please understand that, you know, you've made a choice. You've made a choice to protect a mistake that was made 50 years ago, building on the primary dune. You're going to protect that mistake, and you're sacrificing our priceless public beach. That's your decision, and we want to frame it that way. So I think we've been successful in getting the word out to the public. You know, we can always do more, but we really want people to understand that. And
when those bags break, when the ocean, you know, particularly I know the nor'easter, which can be ferocious, you know, what's inside the bag that will come?
Yeah, so the other issue that actually it sounds minor, but it actually is a very important issue, is how do you get sand? You mentioned that sugary texture.
Unbelievable,
That is so nice.
White sand.
Yeah, that is actually hard to come by. We don't have a lot of stockpiles of that natural beach sand around. And the trustees, the town trustees, are a source of that because they do some dredging projects and they own the bottomland of a lot of the areas in town. For example, Georgia Pond. They don't really have any sand. The amounts they have are minuscule compared to the scope of this project. So the proposal is to fill these bags with quarry sand. And when that breaks open, we'll have a quarry sand beach, which will be something new to people in East Hampton and Montauk. So we actually, I should mention too that a coastal geologist that did a lot of work with Southampton Town and was on deck circle to work with East Hampton Town on this as a consultant on this project. His name is Rob Young. He's a very well-respected, well-known coastal geologist. We were surprised to see that at least there's no public record of him providing any information for the town. The town has basically been reviewing this project and making decisions on this project without the aid of a coastal expert, which is given the nature of this, the scope of this project is pretty outlandish.
Well, and you know, it's surprising because I do remember in the Wilkinson administration that Peter Van Scoyoc was always asking for a coastal engineer.
Right,
And I don't know what happened to that.
right. It may be that the town has been making phone calls to Rob Young, but there's no record of any information from Rob Young other than a letter that Rob Young wrote on behalf of Surfrider Foundation. He reviewed this, submitted a 3-page memo on the project, and was adamantly opposed to this whole project for a number of reasons. One, you can't build an artificial dune, which the Army Corps actually acknowledges is a bump out into the Atlantic Ocean. It just won't work. You're going to destroy the beach in the process because these bags, although they're filled with sand, if anyone's had any experience with this kind of geotextile bag, they basically reflect the wave energy, including that swash that washes up the beach after the wave breaks. They reflect that as opposed to a natural dune, which is just sand and beach grass roots, which provide kind of a flexible framework for the dune. That has a little more give, and it absorbs that wave energy.
Right.
This reflects the wave energy, and it scours the area seaward of this structure. And so it sends the sand out into the littoral zone and carries it to the west. So that's, and he also pointed out that if you fill all these bags with quarry sand, you're going to end up with a quarry sand beach. And I'm like, well, what would that be like? He said, you won't want to be walking around or putting your blanket down on the beach. So that actually is in the record, and no comment from the town board, though. And I do have a couple other things that Surfrider Foundation's environmental director, Tom Muse of Montauk, put together. So we looked for examples of geotextile fabric filled sand structures on the beach. Now these are geotubes. They're not the same thing that's being proposed in this, but they do act the same way. And we couldn't find any examples of New Jersey, Great Lakes, Florida, of a beach seaward of these things. So you can see they did protect, it looks like they protected that house, or though it looks like they're doing some work on the foundation up there in the middle. But yeah, not a good
So,
situation.
and all of these, it looks like the geotextile, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, it's hard to keep them covered. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Now, it's not clear that some of these were set up and with the idea that they would be covered with sand as opposed to just protecting the upland area.
And when they
But
are,
I should mention one other thing. So we did get a memo from the Army Corps of Engineers. They had a consultant that looked into where the geotextile bags had been used, and could they give examples of how they worked. I think there were 8 cases they looked at that had been studied and peer-reviewed papers. Not one had a beach in front of the geotextile bags. So
they're left with just these bags on the beach.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And Rob Young claims that in the case of the Montauk project, because of the wave energy there, we won't even get a year out of this project. Now, this has happened before, and interestingly, this has happened, this project was done in the mid-90s by the same corporation that's proposing to do this work. That's First Coastal, Aram Tachunian.
Of West
Head of
Hampton.
that, yeah. And this was the Rudin project in Bridgehampton. So this is Job's Lane, comes in, and then it turns into Dune Road and goes down to Scott Cameron Beach. And his house was sticking out further than any of the other houses along the stretch. And the idea was we're going to do these sausage-shaped geotextile bags. No, not bags, the tubes. This was the tube project. And I was working at the group for the South Fork at the time, and we fought this project and lost. One of many projects we lost when I was at the group.
Yes,
But we were always on the good side, I
Commons.
think. You know, you just think about it. So here's the ocean. Like, how do you set those sand-filled tubes up? You can't, you have to fill them on site. Well, it ended up, they had to build a cofferdam, a steel cofferdam here, and pump the water out with a return on either side, and pump the water out in order to dig the trench and get the sand, the first layer of tubes in. And while just the short time period the cofferdam was set up, the wave energy reflecting off of the dam scoured. This guy was in, you know, he had a huge beach in front of him here before the project started, and he actually got undermined. Part of his deck got undermined before the project was over. And as soon as well, actually what happened was the sea worked itself around the edges of the cofferdam before the project was totally completed. And that created a lot of problems. They ended up getting everything set, and they pulled the sheets out. And this is January. I mean, it didn't even last the winter.
Yeah.
Oh, total disaster. And think about it. I mean, just look at this aerial. You know, basically, you have the natural shoreline and the natural dune, and then you're trying to create. Now, this is a small-scale project. This is probably 200 linear feet of shoreline.
Yeah, right. It is very
Yeah,
small.
you're trying to maintain this little point, this little bump out in the dune. It's crazy.
Well, that's the last one.
That's the last one. Yeah.
So leave it there.
Okay.
You know what? I wanted to tell you a little story also about me, since I was many, many years at the ocean. And there was a
This was Fire Island.
in Fire Island. And there was a nor'easter that came in 1996. And until, first of all, there was nothing left below the stairs to the beach. You had to jump down to get to the beach. And as you walked from Lonelyville to Fair Harbor, there was house after house after house in the surf of the ocean. Mm-hmm. And until you see that, you cannot have that gut feeling of the power of that ocean. I mean, these were houses in Dunewood and in Fair Harbor that I knew. I knew who owned them. I knew the people who were there. And it was amazing to see what had happened in one storm, one nor'easter.
Right.
You know. Now, I will tell you that, as you had mentioned, you know, leave it alone. And eventually, you know, sand came in a little bit, little by little, and and some of that filled up. Of course, they never rebuilt on that because they were on the primary dune, which you really should not do. But who knew? I mean, when the guy developed it, Murray Barbash, I don't know that he knew that. When they put those geotextile tubes in and put that sand on top of it, are they going to put the dune grass? Is anybody planning to plant?
Probably, yeah, I would think they would do that. Absolutely, yeah, because the dune sand material. So I guess they hope that they'll get enough from the 3-foot trench, 3 foot by 50 foot wide by 3,000 linear feet, enough to top off the sandbags and then, yeah, plant plugs of beach grass. Because without that, the wind will just send that, you know, here and there and expose the bags.
So the Army Corps of
beach grass is key, yeah.
Yeah, the Army Corps of Engineers doing this whole project.
I'm not sure that they're going to do all of the project. They might,
They're not going to ask me because I've done enough planting of beach grass in my life.
yeah, that's something that they might farm out to other private companies to do. Yeah. I'm not sure about that.
Uh-huh.
But like I said, you know, having a dune where nature doesn't really want the dune, particularly seaward of where the natural dune line is. I don't know of any examples where that's ever been done on Long Island. And I've spent a lot of time on the beach, as we were talking about earlier. I lived at the beach. That was my home away from home.
Yeah.
And every beach is a little bit different, but there are some generalizations. And
Yes.
primary
the literal
dune is,
flow
I
is,
mean, you know, we had, you know, there's many places that, like Hither Hills Campground, you know, they many years ago, they never had restricted footpaths to get from the campground over to the beach. And just people over the years walking wherever was closest to their tent,
yeah.
they destroyed the beach grass. And every spring, the park would have to bulldoze all the sand out of the campground and build a little berm up to mark off the edge of the campground, the beginning of the beach. And then George Larson, I think it was in the 70s, proposed this big project, and he had some Boy Scouts come out, and they did a massive planting. And they didn't have a lot of sand, so it was a small dune. But once they got the beach grass going, and they limited the footpaths to certain places, and a lot of signage, though the beach grass acted like snow fencing, and that dune grew. And today it's a sizable dune.
Well,
and in great shape.
Continue on. Thank you, Mike, for
Thanks for
coming,
having me.
and keep fighting because, you know, we want to do the right thing.
Well, fighting and educating, we hope.
Yes.
We hope we
Yes.
are probably going to lose this battle, but we hope that we've raised awareness of the mistake that we're about to make, and that it doesn't happen again.
Oh, boy. Do you think we'll learn?
Hopefully.
Oh, God.